The master teacher lives within silence. Stillness is required. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in him will I trust. I can recall a time in my worship experience where I didn't feel as though I was connecting with God unless I was making a loud noise, unless I was making a loud prayer. And the louder I made that prayer and the more I turned up the volume, the more I felt that I was connecting with spirit. But then all of a sudden, as years passed, I entered into a new way of thinking, entered into a new realm, if you will, of believing, and found out that there was power in the silence, that I could more readily connect with spirit by being still. Dr. Ernest Holmes writes, he says that our work will be best done in quiet expectancy and in calm confidence. The results rest in the eternal law of good. And what is he saying other than the place of quiet expectancy happens when one consciously places themselves in the essence of God? Consciously place ourselves in the essence of God. We so often say that in him we live and we move and we have our being. But just think for a moment what happens when we consciously embrace that, consciously accept that, and then deposit ourselves into that way of thinking. Such as, of myself, I can do nothing. But as I turn to the Christ within, as I turn to that place where I identify God within myself, though it is quiet and though it may be still, but when I turn there, I am empowered. When I turn there, I become anointed. When I turn there, I open myself up to receive the gifts of spirit that are constantly pouring themselves out. It's in those moments of quietness that our expectancy rises, an expectancy that we are going to receive something dynamic, something powerful, something reassuring. We are going to receive the gift that we are in search of. Why? Because there are no limits with spirit. The only limitations there are those that we place there. As I began, I placed limitation in the beginning because my limitation was, unless I was making a robust noise, God could not hear me. And if God could not hear me, then how could I expect to receive a blessing? But then as I transitioned in consciousness, and I'm sure it's the same for most of us, we understood that in that still moment, in that quiet time, those were the times of sweet communion, absolutely, with spirit. It was Dr. William James, a noted neurotheologist. He wrote this. He says that human beings, by changing the inner attitudes of their minds, can change the outer aspects of their life. Changing simple things from I cannot till I can. I will not till I will. Simple changes, simple shifts, the things that we accept and we believe have powerful impacts upon our circumstance. Powerful, reminding us just how powerful we truly, truly are. I think I mentioned this the last time I was here that, since I've recovered from my replacement surgery, and as I go out walking now, it's in my mind that I'm accepting an idea that I am the glory of God made manifest as me. And every step that I take, I'm turning up the volume in consciousness, not saying anything aloud, but in the quiet of my own mind, I'm making an affirmation of truth, something that is convincing me of my own realization that I am the glory of God made manifest as me. You see, when we begin to think that way, we have a greater expectation for ourselves because we want absolutely God to be represented in all that we do. And that's how we can make that statement that I am the glory of God. Now, in your belief, if you feel that moment, you embrace God and spiritually just align yourself, that's the moment you become empowered. Is that you have to do something. You have to consciously align yourself. So often we get up and we run out and we do a whole bunch of things and we forget about making a conscious connection with spirit. And then at the end of the day, when things have not necessarily fallen in place or gone the way that we would like them to have gone, or accomplished that which we set out to do, we become a little bit disappointed. But if we would just reflect back just for a moment on our start, how did I start the day? How did I seed my experience? And see, if we fail to seed our own experience, what is your expectation? See, when we understand that we have been empowered spiritually, that the essence, the idea of Christ within us is there for a reason. And the more that we accept that, the more we become empowered, and the more that we become empowered, the more we have an expectation of ourselves. So when we set out in the day, it's like it's a new day, it's a new moment, it's a new opportunity that we have been blessed with. But it means that we need to seize that moment and to do something with it. Now, those of us that have a plan for our lives, those of us that are visionaries of our own destinies, will wake up in the morning and then put a plan in motion. We will see beyond the immediate, and we'll see fulfillment happening to ourselves and through ourselves, because we are the glory of God. And we're stepping out into an opportunity that Spirit has presented unto us. So what happens if we would just seize that moment and say that this is the day I'm going to do something with my life. This is the day I'm going to alter my circumstance. This is the day I'm going to find fulfillment in this thing that God called man and filled it with the essence of its own self. See, this is a very clear example of first seeking the kingdom of God and then to receive the benefit of your action. There is a benefit that comes to us. It's like we're here today. We didn't just get up and get dressed and come out here because we just want to come to church and sit here. It's part of a purpose. I would like to think it's part of a plan. I would like to think that we came that we might be just a little bit more empowered, that there may be another word that's spoken that helps me bring the puzzle together, to help me bring my understanding to a place where I really want to be, to understand just how I continue to be empowered of spirit, and therefore be able to create a clearer picture or a clearer vision, if you will, of what our tomorrows are going to be. The psalmist put it this way from our reading today. He said, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Now, there is an action that is taking. One has to place themselves in that secret place. And then after placing yourself in that secret place, you need to have some level of expectation. Why am I here? What is it that I expect of Spirit? What am I thinking is going to happen to me and happen through me as a result of me placing myself under the presence of God? And I feel something moving within me. In other words, to live in spirit is to reside in a spiritual place. And that is a special place. See, but we have to deem that. Today, each of us came to this place, and we call it a spiritual center. Now, however, when you entered into this space, what was your feelings? The building was quiet. And now you have an opportunity to be open to your purpose. What did you feel when you came in? As you found your seat and as you settled in, could you say for truth that you felt the presence of Spirit right where you were? And therefore you received the first step of your fulfillment in coming to this place today. That there was a strengthening. There was a renaissance that was taking place within your consciousness, something that lifted you up, something that was giving you greater hope, something that was broadening your vision, something that was letting you know that, yes, this is a moment of greater empowerment. And the power was coming from a place unseen, untouched, but yet felt at the core of our being. So when you entered in and you sat down, you opened yourself up to more. And that more is dictated by you. What was your level of expectancy when you came in here today? What was your commitment to that expectancy? And what do you think you're going to take out of here when you leave? You know, when I received the text from Dr. Clara and I read the theme for this month, the master teacher lives within silence. It was a song that just sort of came to me, and it's just has sort of burned in my heart the whole month. Did that ever happen to you? Something you've heard a word, and all of a sudden an inspiration just came to you, whether it was a song, whether it was poetry, whether it was something that you have read, but it just sort of lingered in. And the more it lingered, the more you sort of understood and you felt it and you allowed it to empower you. And in this instance, it was a song that was written, it was sung rather by Karen Clark Sheard. It was written by Richard Smallwood, and it was entitled A Secret Place. A Secret Place. And the lyrics were something like, the world sometimes seems cruel and cold, and pain appears in my very soul. But there is a place, a secret place, a place where I can go. A place of peace, where love abides, where justice reigns and God resides. There is a place, a secret place, a place where I can go. For you may hide me in your tabernacle from the rain and cold. And when my enemies, they do pursue me, you keep me safe from harm. Isn't that a special place? And that becomes our secret place, the place where the master lives within. And that's the place where we can be hidden from everything and everything that is unlike God itself. The enemies that are pursuing us, so often, we think of enemies, we think of people that are outside of ourselves. But the enemies so often are the things of our own household. And by that, I mean the elements of our own thoughts, the consciousness, that the things that we create within our own minds, those are our enemies. And those are the things that oftentimes pursue us. But when we find ourselves entering into that secret place, that special place, that place where the master resides, we're hidden from it all. And we find safety, we find serenity, we find calmness and peace. As the psalmist says, abiding under the shadow of the Almighty. Dr. Holmes puts it this way. He says, the secret of prayer and its power in the outward life depends upon an unconditioned faith in and reliance upon this inner presence. He says we must enter the closet. That is, we are to shut out all else and enter the precinct of spirit in quietness and in confidence. Key words: in quietness and in confidence. When we consciously enter into the presence of spirit, and it makes no difference where we may be, whether it is at home, whether it is at work, whether we're just sitting in a parking lot or in the sanctuary such as we are right now, when we sit in the quiet, and in that quiet moment, reach into the invisible with confidence, knowing that as we are doing this metaphorical reach, something else is reaching back towards us. And in our confidence, we believe that we are going to make connection. And we're making connection for a reason. There's been something that's been on our prayer plate, something that we've been seeking relief of, something we've been seeking success in, something we've been looking to gain. But this is that moment, that quiet moment, that secret place where we are there with the master teacher, where we are allowing ourselves to become vulnerable and we are laying it all out, because at that moment it's just us and God. And therefore we can be honest and release, knowing that as we do so, we're creating space to receive more, and that is what we are doing. In confidence, we are receiving. It's Bishop T.D. Jakes. He wrote a book that's entitled Instinct. And whether we call the gift intuition or whether we call it instinct, they are both really spiritual directions given by the master teacher, instructing us from that place of silence. And these are just the names that we identified by, something that helps us to understand what's going on. So, but Bishop Jakes says this, he says, some people have the courage to move beyond the ordinary, from the methodical, mediocre, into the revolutionary realization of where they belong. He said, you have this sense of belonging only when you connect with your core calling. You have a sense of belonging, but only when you connect with your core calling. Now, that calling could be a calling to creativity. It could be a calling to teach. It could be a calling to give, a calling to build. All these are a part of you allowing your instinct to guide you. And what is that other than trusting spirit? And here's where that word confidence comes in once again. What confidence do we have in God? Do we have real confidence? And as I hear that word, I'm thinking of an instance when Paul was testifying of an instance where he said that something was just paining him. He called it a thorn in his side. And he said he just couldn't find any relief. And he said it just bothered him so that he said he went to God 3 times with it, trying to find release, getting some relief from whatever it was that was plaguing him. But then the greatest realization came to him was that Spirit said to him, listen, my grace is sufficient for thee. Grace is efficient. So in this instance, what is that grace? Just knowing right where we are, God is. Not just today. Same is true on tomorrow. The same is true on all the next weeks of our lives. And it reveals itself the most is those instances when we are plagued with something, whether it's hearing of bad news for ourselves or someone who's close to us, whether it's being involved in something that is robbing us of our happiness, to look beyond it all and to realize that the grace of God is sufficient. It's sufficient enough for me to understand, to affirm, and to believe with all the confidence I have. That is right where I am. God is. And even in your darkest moments, if you would just say that to yourself and say it until you absolutely feel it. And that's the key. Don't just say it because you heard me tell you to say it today, but try it for yourself. Try it yourself. And whatever it is you're dealing with, just say to yourself, right where I am, God is. And see, when that fully embraces you so completely, you'll know that right where you are, all the power there is, all the glory there is, all the presence there is, all the love that there is, and whatever else it is that you need, it is all right there in that moment. Imagine if you said to yourself, I'm going to embrace all of that right now. Get as much of that as I can. What is this, once again, but connecting to the Christ within ourselves? See, it's that silent connection that brings about that explosive reward. Because it's your connection. The wonderful thing is no one but yourself know what it is that you are connecting with. Everyone else may pass you, and they just see a person either sitting, standing, or whatever it is that you're doing. No one has a clue of what's going on in your consciousness. I can go back to a time, I remember Wednesday nights were really special for me when I was a member of Founders Church. And I would look so forward to attending Wednesday night service. See, this was my very special time that I felt to connect. That I could go into the sanctuary, and it was just so extremely comfortable. The lights were very dim. Listen to George Goulding playing on the pipe organ there. And it was just such a tranquil moment. And before long, I had just lost myself. While I was physically there, spiritually, I was someplace else. I had a teacher once who used to talk about astral traveling, out-of-body experiences. And didn't quite understand exactly what he was talking about. And I listened to it and it sounded intriguing. Then all of a sudden, I found myself in that space, in that same experience, understanding now even more fully what it was that he was describing. Why? Because I was there myself. It was in those moments that I felt that I drifted to another realm. oblivious to any and everything else that was going on. After a while, I started out hearing the music, and after a while, I didn't even hear that. Because consciously, I was somewhere else. And that's why those moments were so empowering. And I used to remember at the end of the service how I would just sort of chuckle to myself, because when Dr. Hornaday finally got up to give his lesson, I was someplace else altogether different. I was ready for the benediction and ready to go home, really, because I had received the fulfillment of my quest. I had came in and I had touched the hem of that divine garment. And whatever it was that was plaguing my experience, it was no longer there. I had been empowered to release it all. And that lets you understand how such an important and powerful experience release is. And see, we can't really do that until we have fully embraced that power and that presence in complete confidence. And know that it is doing that we were seeking and searching and desiring it to do. And therefore now all else we can just kind of let go. Because why? We're letting go. See, it was moments like that where there was nothing audible, but yet feeling the power and feeling the words I was thinking. Not hearing them, feeling them. In the silence. Those are the most powerful, powerful moments. The master teacher lives within the silence. And if we are going to visit the master, that's where we have to go. Into the silence. For some of us, we've not gotten quite comfortable with the quiet. We got to have some noise. Because we don't have noise, we're going to go crazy. But then a lot of us, we love that complete quiet. Hearing nothing but what is going on in our hearts. And being thankful for all of it. Pause with me for a moment, if you will. Both here and those who are watching virtually, just close your eyes. And let us all just know that not only does the master teacher live with the silence, but from that quiet place pours out abundantly into the receptive consciousness. Receive your very special blessing today. Peace and blessings to you.